Hello and welcome back to my channel. For today's Mountain Talk video, we're going to be talking about Alison Hargreaves and Tom Ballard, a mother and son renowned around the world for their climbing feats, who both sadly perished while attempting records on 8,000-meter mountains. It's unfortunately not uncommon for a family to lose more than one person to climbing, sometimes even in the same event. A lot of families love to climb together, which has meant several occasions where a father and son or a pair of siblings were both lost in an avalanche or something similar. But in this particular case, two world-renowned climbers in the same family were lost 24 years apart from one another. Alison Hargreaves, often said to be the world's finest female alpinist, was born on February 17, 1962 in Derbyshire, UK. She and her husband Jim Ballard were both avid climbers and outdoor enthusiasts who ran an outdoor sporting goods store together. She already had a number of accomplishments under her belt. In 1988, Alison climbed the Eiger North Face, which is already a mountaineering feat, but she did it while 6 months pregnant with her son Tom, and in 1993, she solo climbed all of the great north faces of the Alps in a single season, becoming the first climber ever to do so and breaking 2 additional records in the process, becoming the first woman to solo climb the Cross Spur on the Grands Jorasses and the first woman to solo climb the north face of the Matterhorn. She was often criticized for leaving her 2 young children, Tom and Kate, at home for long periods of time when she went on these expeditions, but these are criticisms that were never levied at her male counterparts who also had children. In 1995, she was on a mission to climb the world's 3 highest peaks with no supplemental oxygen, aiming to be the first woman to accomplish each of these climbs. She began with Sagarmatha in May, and the climb was said to have been clear, beautiful, and astoundingly good that year. On May 13th, she became the first woman to solo Sagarmatha with no supplemental oxygen or Sherpa support, setting a world record. From the summit, she radioed a message to her children, saying, "To Tom and Kate, my children, I am on the highest point in the world, and I love them dearly." When she returned home to rest, she was met with an explosive wave of love and support, being hailed a national hero. In June, she headed to Chogori, this time joining an American team that already had a permit to climb the mountain. From my memory, sometimes solo climbers will join a team's permit because it's a faster way to get on the mountain and can sometimes be cheaper, but then they'll still climb solo. But in this case, it looks like Alison did actually climb with this team, led by Rob Slater. Rob Slater was a former financial broker and big wall climber who had reportedly never climbed above 5,800 meters, and before leaving for Chogori, was quoted in a magazine as saying, "Summit or die, either way I win." All things considered, honestly, this guy should not have been leading a climbing team on any of the 8,000ers, much less one as dangerous as Chogori. Alison Hargreaves and Rob Slater met for the first time at base camp and reportedly hit it off immediately and worked incredibly well together. This ultimately would lead to disaster. Weather on Chogori is always incredibly volatile and was especially so this year. After 5 weeks of grueling climbing, around August 6th, the rest of Alison and Rob's team decided to turn back, giving up their summit bid for the year. However, confident in their skills and teamwork, Alison and Rob decided to continue on. On August 13th, they were preparing to summit. That morning, they joined a New Zealand and Canadian team comprised of Bruce Grant, Jeff Flakes, Kim Logan, and Peter Hillary, the son of Sir Edmund Hillary, who was the first Westerner to summit Sagarmatha. By mid-morning, they had reached the bottleneck, which, if you've missed my previous videos, has this lovely serac that hangs over the climbers and is an incredible danger along the route. It was here that they were huddled with a group of 5 Spanish climbers: Javier Escartan, Javier Olivar, Lorenzo Ortiz, Lorenzo Ortaz, and Jose Garces. Peter Hillary later reported that the weather began to turn here. He was quoted as saying, "Big alto stratus clouds were moving in and a strong wind was blowing snow. I saw everyone crossing the traverse, then they disappeared in the clouds." Peter Hillary and Kim Logan turned back, deciding it wasn't safe to continue on, and here it gets a bit confusing for me. Jeff Flakes was also reported to have turned back at some point after Peter and Kim did, and supposedly everyone else continued up. But later, when Alison reached the summit and radioed Camp 4 to let them know, it was Lorenzo Ortaz who took the call, and he was with Jose Garces at the time, which leads me to believe that both of them also turned back at some point. Either that, or they were incorrectly reported as having been up under the serac. Without actually having been there, sometimes it can be really confusing trying to put together what happened afterward. Alison Hargreaves, who had passed up Rob Slater and was now climbing with Javier Olivar, successfully summited that evening at 6:45 p.m., radioing Camp 4 to tell Ortaz about their success. The weather was reportedly really exceptional on the summit, and they believed that the descent would be a breeze, but this unfortunately was not the case. Reportedly within the hour, hurricane-force winds around 140 miles an hour and sub-zero temperatures created a weather event that led to one of the the most talked about mountaineering disasters in history. Artaz and Jose Garces spent the night together huddled in a sleeping bag trying to survive after their tent had been destroyed. But Allison and the other 5 climbers were trapped in the death zone with no protection. From base camp, a climber with binoculars reported seeing climbers pinned down by wind, but no calls for help ever came in. The next morning, as Artaz and Garces, who had miraculously survived, were descending toward Camp 3, they came across a bloody anorak boot and a harness, equipment that they distinctly recognized as belonging to Allison Hargreaves. From Camp 3, they could also see a body in the distance, but they didn't approach it, so the person that they saw was never positively identified. Despite this, they had little doubt that it was Allison, and concluded that she must have been blown off the mountain in the storm. Jeff Flakes is the only other climber who was ever found and identified. He had managed to descend as far as Camp 2 and avoid the storm, but he sadly still passed in a tent overnight. Each of these climbers is represented on the memorial that stands at the base camp of Chogori. Many people questioned whether these climbers truly didn't recognize the danger or if they were overtaken by summit fever and making irrational decisions in the pursuit of success. If you've seen any of my previous videos, you know it's kind of an unspoken rule amongst mountaineers that if you can't summit by noon, you turn around because it's not safe. Allison, being as experienced as she was, definitely knew this. Allison's story in particular touched many around the world who had been following her, and their hearts went out to her husband and 2 young children. But in this case, rather than an outpouring of love and support for Allison, there was backlash, calling her selfish for leaving her young children behind to climb mountains, which was again not a criticism levied against any of the fathers who also died that climbing season. People questioned whether she went into the mountains to die, but before she left, she had told BBC Scotland that no one would set out to do something if they thought that it would cost them their lives. That is the public regard of mountains and climbing. When we go climbing, we minimize the risks. If anyone went off deciding they might not ever come back, that would be a very unfair thing to do, especially for someone with a young family. Allison did not at all sound like a person who was reckless in her decision-making. She very much wanted to get home to her family. Her family, in turn, has always adamantly fought the criticism against her, praising Allison for her determination and accomplishments, and acknowledging that she helped instill their love of the mountains. Jim promised to take the kids to Chogori shortly after Allison had passed, wanting them to understand the awesome beauty of the mountain. Both of Allison's children became mountaineers, and in 2015, her son Tom followed in her footsteps, setting a new record by solo climbing all the great north faces of the Alps, just like his mom did, but this time in the winter, becoming the first person ever to do so. In 2019, Tom was attempting to summit Nanga Parbat via an entirely new route with his friend and climbing partner Danielle Nardi. Now, if you saw my previous video, I stated that Nanga Parbat is also known as Diamir, but I need to make a correction here. The article that I was reading said that the Diamir face on Nanga Parbat was named that because the mountain used to be called Diamir, but I can't find anything else confirming that. And with mountains like Chogori and Sagarmatha, there's a lot more information out there confirming what their previous names were, so I think in this case I was just mistaken. I'm going to continue to call the mountain Nanga Parbat for now. Tom had already accomplished a plethora of incredible feats in the climbing world, taking him to many of the most challenging peaks. On Nanga Parbat, Tom and Danielle were attempting the Mummery Spur, which is where the first known attempt to summit the mountain happened in 1895 and has remained unclimbed to this day. On February 24th, after several months on the mountain, Tom and Danielle went missing. I was following this climb, and when the news hit that they were missing, the energy and fear was super palpable. Allison was famous both due to her incredible feats and, unfortunately, her tragic passing, and that was what had put Tom in the spotlight from a young age, painted as a child who had climbed out of the tragedy of his mother's death and lived to walk in her footsteps, and this was especially highlighted in the rescue operation. Every news article highlighted what happened to Allison, and honestly, as horrific and tragic as it is anytime a climber goes missing, this got a lot more attention than these cases normally do, and I think it was because of what happened to Allison. Their friends and family raised 148,000 euros or 181,000 US dollars for a rescue mission that took place between high-altitude drones, Pakistani army helicopters, and mountaineers searching on foot, with Pakistani climber Ali Sadpara, the only climber to have ever climbed Nanga Parbat in the winter, helping with operations. Rescue attempts were complicated and delayed due to bad weather and tensions between India and Pakistan, leading to delays and sealed airspace, meaning that no more rescue helicopters could continue. Despite this, searchers noticed evidence of an avalanche that had happened high on the mountain, and it had been reported that a large avalanche loud enough for villagers miles away to hear had come down the mountain recently. At some point, Elise Para also saw a tent that looked like it had been hit by an avalanche, but it was unclear whether it belonged to Tom and Danielle because it was away from where they thought they would be climbing. On March 6th, the media prematurely announced that the search was called off, with both climbers presumed to have perished. But the next day, March 7th, Alex Chaikin, who was continuing the search, spotted what appeared to be the outline of two bodies in the rocky part of the Memory Spur. Photographs were sent to their families as well as a few other key people, and it was agreed that the figures were most likely Tom and Danielle. On March 9th, 2019, it was confirmed that their bodies had been found. It remains unclear still if it was an avalanche, a fall, or a combination of the two that caused Tom and Danielle to perish. As with the vast majority of climbers who die high in the mountains, Tom and Danielle remain on Nanga Parbat in their final resting place. Later in 2019, Kate, who had now lost both her mother and her brother to the mountains, made a pilgrimage to Nanga Parbat's base camp. She said it was simply to see Tom's last mountain. It's a magnificent place, days from civilization, completely wild, untouched, and grandiosely glorious. Our wish is that Tom will be left at rest on the mountain, at peace, undisturbed, as with Mum on K2. In the mountains, Mum and Tom found peace and a sense of freedom. They simply loved to climb and were talented enough to do so at the highest level. While it may be hard to understand, many climbing families respect their loved ones' choices and understand why they do what they do, and ultimately want them to rest peacefully. While many people struggle with the idea of someone they love doing something so dangerous, there's an understanding in climbing families as to why mountaineering is so important, intrinsic, and impossible to ignore. For some, the call of these mountains is simply irresistible, and ultimately, you can be an incredibly safe, experienced climber, as was the case for both Tom and Allison, and still meet with disaster. When death happens in the mountains, it's not for lack of care, preparation, or desire to preserve life. It's simply that these mountains can be unpredictable and deadly, and there's a risk every time you go up. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching this video. I truly hope you enjoyed it and learned something today. Please consider leaving a like and a comment and subscribing if you haven't yet, because we do these mountain videos nearly every week. A huge thank you to my patrons for your support in my content creation. I genuinely could not do this without you. And if you'd like to follow me on Patreon or Instagram, I will have them linked down below. Right now, my Patreon just has a tip tier for the content that I'm currently creating, but I've been creating some other content that's going to be going up soon, and I'm very excited to announce that. I also apologize. I realized I announced too soon that I was going to have Patreon stuff going up. Got too excited, and I should have waited a few more weeks into creating the content before I made that announcement. But it's out there now. So it's still coming, I promise. I just got a little bit overzealous in my excitement. I think I am just going to make my outros to tell you to drink water, because let's be real, you're probably dehydrated. Go drink some water.